So, this whole mess began with what was supposed to be a simple playlist. I've always been the kind of guy who leans on classical music when life feels too loud. Beethoven, Mozart, Chopin, you name it. There's something grounding about it, like it pins my emotions to the floor so they don't float off and suffocate me. Anyway, last month I decided to make a playlist of what I considered the 15 most popular classical masterpieces of all time. Nothing fancy, just the kind of stuff you'd recognize from a movie or commercial. Beethoven's Fifth, Mozart's Ein kleine Nachtmusik, Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, Vivaldi's Four Seasons, and of course, Debussy's Clair de Lune. You get the idea. But here's the thing. What started as a playlist for myself turned into something way bigger. My wife, let's call her Emily, saw me working on it late at night and asked what I was doing. I told her, half joking, that I was curating the soundtrack of my life. She laughed, kissed me on the head, and said she wanted to hear it when it was done. I didn't think much of it. But a week later, that same playlist ended up being played at a dinner party Emily hosted with some friends from work. That's when things started to unravel. Because while I was in the kitchen pouring drinks, I overheard something I wasn't supposed to. Something that would turn what should have been just a playlist of beautiful music into the beginning of one of the most painful betrayals I've ever experienced. And honestly, even now, I can't listen to Clair de Lune without my stomach tightening. So there I am, in the kitchen, pouring wine and kind of half-humming along with Mozart's Ein kleine Nachtmusik. It's one of those pieces that feels like champagne in sound, bubbly, playful, kind of perfect for a dinner party. I'm balancing a tray of glasses when I hear laughter from the living room. Nothing unusual. Emily's always been better than me at entertaining. But then I catch her voice, lower, softer, and the way she said it made me freeze mid-step. She said, "I told you I'd play it for you. This one's our song." Our song. At first, I thought maybe she was just being charming, exaggerating for her friends. But when I peeked around the corner, it wasn't the whole group laughing. It was her, sitting way too close to this guy from her office, Mark. Mark, the guy she'd mentioned casually before. The funny one, the creative one. I saw him smirk as Debussy's Clair de Lune floated through the speakers, and my stomach dropped. That was the song she specifically told me was her favorite. The one she swore reminded her of our first late-night drive together. And now she was sharing it with him. I just stood there, holding that tray, feeling like some extra in my own life. My chest went hot, then cold, then weirdly numb. I wanted to walk in, slam the glasses down, and call them both out. But instead, I did something I'm not proud of. I quietly backed into the kitchen and pretended I hadn't heard anything. Because part of me hoped, really hoped, that I was imagining it. That the wine was messing with my head. That music wasn't betraying me the way she just did. But deep down, I knew better. The party kept going, but I wasn't really in it anymore. I walked out with the wine, smiled like nothing was wrong, and handed glasses around. On the outside, I looked fine. On the inside, though, it felt like Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake was stabbing me in the ribs with every note. Emily had set my playlist to shuffle, and I swear the damn songs were mocking me. When Blue Danube Waltz by Strauss came on, the whole group kind of chuckled and started humming along. Everyone knows that one. But then I noticed Emily get up and tug on Mark's sleeve, like, "Come on." And just like that, they were swaying in the middle of our living room. Not an actual dance, but close enough. Too close. Her hand lingered a second too long on his shoulder, and his arm brushed her waist like it belonged there. And everyone else just clapped and laughed like it was some silly, harmless thing. But it wasn't harmless to me. It was like watching someone spray paint graffiti over a memory I thought was ours. I couldn't take it anymore. I excused myself, muttering something about needing air, and stepped out onto the porch. The night was quiet except for the muffled sound of the music through the walls. That stupid waltz. Out there, alone, I felt the first real wave of anger hit me. My fists were clenched, jaw locked, and I thought, this is happening in my own house. To my own music. But anger only lasted so long before it collapsed into something heavier. Sadness. Confusion. That hollow ache you can't explain. And standing there, I asked myself the first of many questions I still don't fully have answers to. Had this already been going on before tonight? When the last guest finally left, The house was a battlefield of empty wine glasses and crumpled napkins. The music had stopped, but it still echoed in my head. Every note sharp, every melody poisoned. Emily came into the kitchen barefoot, humming a little piece of Vivaldi's Four Seasons like she didn't have a care in the world. I was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, trying to steady my voice before I said anything. "Fun night," she said, smiling, not even looking at me. That smile, that casual nothing's wrong here smile, was the final straw. "Why did you say that to him?" I asked. She froze. "Say what?" "That Claire de Lune was your song. Our song. Why the hell did you tell him that?" Her face flickered, just for a second. Then she laughed it off, shaking her head. "Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. It was a joke." "A joke?" My chest tightened. So dancing with him was a joke, too? She rolled her eyes. "Seriously? It was harmless. You're overreacting." But I wasn't overreacting. I knew what I'd seen, what I'd heard. It wasn't harmless. It wasn't a joke. The thing that gutted me most wasn't just her closeness with Mark. It was how quickly she dismissed me. Like my feelings didn't matter. Like I was some inconvenient background noise to her evening. I wanted to push, to demand the truth, to corner her with the facts I had. But instead, I just stood there, silent, letting her walk past me. And that silence, it felt like betrayal's cruelest weapon. The next morning, I sat alone in the living room, coffee going cold on the table. I opened Spotify to my playlist, the one that was supposed to be mine, and just stared at the list of pieces. 15 masterpieces, 15 anchors that had always grounded me. But now, they didn't sound the same. Beethoven's Symphony No. 5 came on first, and instead of power and triumph, all I heard was doom. Those opening notes pounding like a judge's gavel in my chest. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Then Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, one of the most peaceful, beautiful things ever written, twisted into something bittersweet. Every note reminded me of her humming in the kitchen last night, acting like nothing had happened. By the time I got to Claire de Lune, I couldn't do it. I slammed the laptop shut. My playlist, the thing I'd poured hours into building, had been hijacked by the memory of Emily's smile at Mark, their harmless little dance, and that whisper I wasn't supposed to hear. I swear, betrayal has a way of staining everything it touches. Even music. Especially music. That's when I decided I had to know the truth, no matter how ugly it was. Because if she could dismiss me so easily, maybe she was hiding more than I thought. And if I was right, I didn't know if I could ever listen to these songs the same way again. That afternoon, when Emily went out for groceries, I sat there staring at her phone on the counter. Normally, I'd never cross that line. I've always believed trust is sacred, but trust had already been shattered, first by her words, then by her actions, and most of all by that smug little laugh when I called her out. So I picked it up. My hands were sweating like I was about to perform at Carnegie Hall. I scrolled through her texts, half hoping, half dreading what I might find. And sure enough, there he was, Mark. Thread after thread of inside jokes, emojis, late night, you still up? Messages. And then I saw it. A voice memo. I pressed play. It was her, softly humming Brahms' lullaby. Except it wasn't for me. She said his name. She said his name in the middle of the hum, like some twisted dedication. I felt like someone had ripped the strings out of a violin mid-performance. My chest hollowed out. That melody had once comforted me as a kid when my mom used to hum it before bed. Now, it was weaponized, repackaged as some kind of intimate signal between Emily and him. I put the phone down, shaking. My first instinct was to smash it against the wall. My second was to call her right then and there. But instead, I just sat in silence, the way I always do when I don't know what comes next. All I could hear in my head was that lullaby looping over and over, mocking me. And for the first time, I wondered if I had the strength to walk away. When Emily came back with the groceries, I was sitting at the table, staring at nothing. My coffee from that morning was still there, ice cold, untouched. She set the bags down and gave me a casual, "Hey, babe," like the universe hadn't just flipped upside down. I didn't play along this time. "I went through your phone," I said, flat, no build-up. Her face snapped toward me, eyes wide. For a second, I thought she'd deny it, but instead she just crossed her arms. "Wow, seriously? You invaded my privacy?" That deflection made my blood boil. You called Brahms' Lullaby his song. You sent him voice memos. You danced with him in my house. And you have the nerve to act like I'm the problem. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Finally, she muttered, "It's not what you think." That phrase, it's a cliché for a reason. It means it's exactly what you think. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor like some ominous note out of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. "Then tell me what it is, Emily. Because from where I'm standing, you've turned the music we shared into some twisted duet with another man." She stayed silent, wouldn't meet my eyes. And honestly, that silence told me more than any excuse ever could. I walked away before I said something I couldn't take back. My heart was pounding like timpani, my thoughts a storm of anger and grief. And that's when I knew this wasn't just about music anymore. This was about whether my marriage still had a song worth saving, or if it had already ended in dissonance. I couldn't stay in the house that night. Every corner felt haunted by a melody we once shared. So I grabbed a bag, muttered something about needing space, and drove to a cheap motel on the edge of town. On the way, I turned on the radio, desperate for distraction. And wouldn't you know it, first station I land on is blasting Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries. Horns blaring, drums pounding, like the soundtrack to my rage. It was almost comical, like the universe had queued it up just for me. But when I checked into the room and sat on the stiff mattress, the adrenaline wore off and the silence pressed down. I tried to drown it with TV, with scrolling, with anything, but silence always has a way of clawing back. Finally, I opened my playlist again. Bad idea. Handel's Hallelujah chorus started playing, but instead of triumph, it sounded mocking, like a choir laughing at me from some cruel distance. Then came Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, a piece I'd always admired for its soaring beauty. That night, it broke me. Every swelling chord felt like a wound tearing open. I sat there with my head in my hands, realizing I couldn't run from it. The music was inside me now, tangled with her betrayal. Even in a dingy motel with paper-thin walls, I couldn't escape. That's when it hit me. Maybe I wasn't running from her. Maybe I was running from the truth I didn't want to admit, that our songbook, our marriage, might already be over. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Emily. At first, I ignored it. I didn't want her voice bleeding into the cheap motel air, didn't want her words clawing at whatever fragile wall I'd built overnight. But curiosity got the better of me, and I finally checked. There were texts. Long ones. "Please come home. You're misunderstanding everything. We need to talk about this like adults." And then, "I love you. You know that, right?" That last one burned. Because love, to me, was Beethoven's ode to joy, big, undeniable, filling every space with light. But her version of love suddenly felt like Mahler's Adagietto. Slow, mournful, almost funereal. I didn't respond. Instead, I put the phone down and stared at the cracked ceiling, letting the motel's buzzing neon sign leak through the curtains. My chest was heavy with questions. Was I being too rigid? Was this something we could fix? Or was I just clinging to a melody that had already ended? By noon, she tried calling. I watched her name light up my screen, heard the ringtone chime like a twisted music box, and let it go to voicemail. She left one, voice trembling, asking me to come back. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because before I faced her, I needed to decide something for myself. Whether I still believed in our music, or if it was time to close the book and walk off stage. That evening, I left the motel room just to clear my head. I ended up wandering into this little cafe I'd never noticed before, the kind of place with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu. It was quiet, almost empty, except for a guy at the back playing piano. And not just playing, he was feeling it. Chopin's Ballade No. 1, fingers gliding, head tilted like every note mattered. I froze by the doorway because that piece, God, that piece, has always been one of my favorites. Pain and beauty tangled together, exactly how my life felt in that moment. I ordered a coffee I didn't really want and sat down near the piano. When he finished, I clapped softly, and he looked up with this kind of knowing smile. "Chopin hits different when your heart's heavy, doesn't it?" he said. It caught me off guard. I didn't tell him everything, but I admitted, yeah, feels like he's telling my story right now. He nodded and said something I'll never forget. The music doesn't betray you. People do. The music's just holding a mirror. That line hit me like a ton of bricks. All this time, I'd been blaming the songs, feeling like they'd turned against me. But he was right. They hadn't changed. I had. My memories had. We talked a bit more. He'd gone through a divorce years ago, said he couldn't listen to Schubert for months because it reminded him of his ex. But eventually, the music became his again. It will for you too, he said. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe the playlist wasn't ruined forever. Maybe I wasn't either. I didn't go back that night. I stayed at the cafe until closing, listening to the piano and letting my thoughts untangle. But the next day, I knew I couldn't hide forever. The motel felt like a cocoon that had kept me safe, but also trapped me in my anger and heartbreak. I drove home, playlist off this time, letting the city noises fill the silence instead of our shared music. When I walked through the front door, everything looked normal. Emily bustling around the kitchen, as if nothing had happened. I took a deep breath and said, "We need to talk." She froze mid-step, grocery bags in hand. Her eyes searched mine, hesitant, uncertain. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell. I just said everything I'd been holding in since the party. How I felt seeing her with Mark, hearing our song with someone else, discovering the messages on her phone, and most of all, how deeply betrayed I felt. Her response wasn't what I expected. No excuses, no anger. Just quiet, almost shameful, and then, I messed up. I know. I shouldn't have done that. I was stupid. Hearing her admit it felt like a chord finally resolving after weeks of dissonance. It didn't erase the pain, but it was the first honest note we'd played in days. We didn't fix everything that night. There was no sudden reconciliation, no magic epiphany. But we started talking, really talking, for the first time in a long while. And the music? For the first time in days, it didn't feel like it was mocking me. In the weeks that followed, Emily and I didn't dive headfirst into everything is fixed. That would have been too easy and, honestly, unrealistic. Instead, we took small steps. Conversations that didn't end in blame. Dinners that didn't include tension hanging over every note of music. Even walks in the park where we didn't have to speak at all. And slowly, I started listening to the playlist again. At first, it was tentative. Beethoven's Fifth still hit hard, reminding me of betrayal, anger, and sleepless nights. But then, as I repeated it day after day, I began to hear the music separately from the memory. Mozart's Ein Klein Nacht music felt like sunlight again. Chopin's nocturnes were soft and comforting. Vivaldi's Four Seasons reminded me that life, like music, has movements, slow, fast, beautiful, stormy, and sometimes messy. One evening, Emily and I sat together while Debussy's Clair de Lune played softly in the background. We didn't dance or hold hands. We just sat there, quiet, letting the music fill the space that words couldn't touch. And for the first time, it felt like our song again. Not hers, not his, but ours. I realized that betrayal doesn't have to define the soundtrack of your life. You can reclaim it, one note at a time. Just when I thought things were settling, life decided to throw another twist. A few weeks later, I came home early from work, thinking I'd surprise Emily with dinner, and found her on a video call with Mark. Not laughing or flirting this time, just a professional-looking discussion about some project at her office. My heart sank anyway. Old fears surged back, and I felt every note of anger and betrayal from the past weeks come roaring back, louder than Mahler's Adagietto. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to process the scene. She noticed me instantly. "It's work, I swear," she said. Her voice was calm, but I could see the strain. I wanted to storm out, slam the door, cancel all the progress we'd made. But I paused, took a deep breath, and remembered what I'd learned in that cafe weeks ago. The music doesn't betray you. People do. And rushing to judgment would only play the same old discord. So I waited quietly. Emily ended the call, came over, and explained everything in detail, the project, the client, how Mark was involved. The honesty, the patience in her voice, helped me temper my reaction. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was a reminder. Trust can be rebuilt, note by note, if both people are willing to face the dissonance together. After that incident, we both knew rebuilding trust wasn't a straight path. But slowly, we started finding our rhythm again, like a piano piece that stumbles through the first measures but eventually hits its stride. We set small rituals, cooking together while Handel's Hallelujah chorus played, going for late-night walks to Debussy, even attending a live concert of Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. Each note was a reminder that music could still heal, that beauty could coexist with pain. Emily was more mindful, and I was more forgiving, not because the betrayal vanished, but because I chose to focus on the life we still wanted to create. And it worked. Gradually, the playlist became ours again. Each masterpiece returned to its original magic. Claire de Lune no longer stabbed my chest. It whispered softly of resilience. I realized that life, like music, has crescendos and rests. Betrayal, heartbreak, fear, they're just minor chords in a larger composition. And if you listen closely, you can find hope even between the dissonance. By the time we sat together one evening, sipping coffee while Vivaldi's Four Seasons played, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: peace. Not because the past was erased, but because I'd learned to face it and keep moving forward. Looking back now, it's wild how a simple playlist of classical music became the soundtrack to one of the most intense chapters of my life. 15 masterpieces, 15 reminders of love, betrayal, anger, and eventually, acceptance. Here's what I learned. Music doesn't betray you. People do. The pieces themselves never changed. It was my memories and emotions that colored them, and I had to separate the two to heal. Confrontation isn't always easy, but honesty is necessary. I could have avoided Emily, avoided the conflict, but I would have been avoiding my own feelings. Facing the truth gave me the power to decide what I wanted next. Trust can be rebuilt, note by note. It takes patience, transparency, and small, consistent actions. It doesn't happen overnight, but it can happen. Pain and beauty can coexist. Listening to the same music that once hurt me now brings comfort. Life doesn't stop being beautiful because it's messy. I can't say everything is perfect, but the playlist is mine again, and so am I. I can sit with Claire de Lune without flinching. I can listen to Tchaikovsky and feel joy, not betrayal. And most importantly, I can carry the lessons forward, knowing that life, like classical music, is full of unexpected shifts, but also incredible moments of harmony. So if you're going through betrayal, heartbreak, or just the kind of hurt that makes you question the soundtrack of your life, remember, the music isn't gone. It's still there. You just have to let yourself hear it again.